I'm Chloe, an architect by profession, and in that moment, I was a bride walking down the aisle. Every detail of my wedding had been meticulously planned, from the flower arrangements to the playlist that would serenade us through the night. I had always envisioned this day as a scene straight out of a romance novel, where love conquers all. Jack, my fiancé, stood at the altar with a nervous smile. An engineer, logical and straightforward, the yin to my creative yang. I believed we complemented each other well, excited to embark on this new chapter of life together. However, as our eyes met, I noticed a distant look in Jack's eyes, almost burdened. Dismissing it as nervousness, I proceeded down the aisle. Yet my unease deepened when my would-be mother-in-law, Linda, leaned over to her neighbor, whispering something with narrowed eyes, sizing me up. When our eyes met, she forced a smile, mouthing, "You look beautiful," but the smile didn't reach her eyes. As the ceremony continued, and the pastor asked if Jack took me to be his lawfully wedded wife, there was an agonizing pause before he finally said, "I do." However, his eyes lacked the warmth I had always associated with those words. During the ring exchange, Linda stood up, taking a photo, declaring loudly that we must capture the moment, stating that weddings are just the first day of a lifelong commitment, her words more a warning than a blessing. At the reception, Linda approached me with a saccharine tone, commenting on my unconventional dress and hinting at my rebellious nature, trying to keep the atmosphere light. I responded, "I believe weddings are a celebration of love, so why stick to convention?" Yet Jack's intervention, though momentarily relieving, carried a resignation that shouldn't be present on such a joyous day. As the first dance began, Jack held me at arm's length, our bodies swaying in rhythm but our souls feeling miles apart. The song, meant to be an anthem of our love, mocked me, and Jack's question, "So, Mrs. Chloe, ready for forever?" echoed in the cavernous space between us. Unsure of what forever held, I said yes, hoping the ominous cloud hanging over us would lift. Little did I know, this was just the prelude to a saga that would test not just my marriage, but the very core of who I was. The feeling that something had already come to an end lingered, even as everyone raised their glasses to toast our new beginning. After the wedding, returning to my cozy 3-bedroom dwelling, purchased with years of hard work, was supposed to be our sanctuary. But the walls that I thought would protect us turned into a prison, a stage for domestic warfare. Linda's subtle invasion began, marked by frequent unannounced visits and relentless criticism, culminating in the shocking announcement that she would be living with us. As she claimed a corner of what was once my reading nook, my heart sank, and I looked at Jack, pleading for him to intervene. I managed to pull him aside, my voice quivering. "This is our home, and we should have discussed this before any decision was made." He looked at me, his eyes void of the love I thought I had seen just a few months ago. "Mom's getting older, Chloe. She shouldn't be alone. She should be with family," he said, emphasizing the last word, as if I weren't considered family. "So I'm not family? Is that what you're saying?" I questioned, feeling the hot sting of tears starting to form. "You know that's not what I mean," he retorted, clearly exasperated. "But Mom has done a lot for me, and I owe her this much." "What about what we owe each other? We just got married, Jack. This is supposed to be our time to grow as a couple, not play house with your mom." But my arguments fell on deaf ears. The decision was made just like that. My opinion, my feelings, my home, none of it seemed to matter. And so Lyndon moved in, turning the love nest I had envisioned into a battlefield of egos, tensions, and outright hostility. Every room in the house felt heavier, suffocated by her presence. I could no longer find a quiet corner to read, a peaceful moment to reflect, or even a loving glance from the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. That's how I realized I wasn't just fighting for my marriage or my home. I was fighting for my identity, my dignity, and my peace of mind. All the while, a single thought echoed through my head. How did it come to this? How did my life, my home, my choices become secondary to the whims of someone else? My reading nook was now a shrine to Linda's possessions, my kitchen a stage for her criticisms, And my husband, well, he was a stranger siding with the enemy. And all of this was just the beginning. If I thought life was hard before, it was nothing compared to the living nightmare that followed. The atmosphere in the house grew denser each day, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. What made it even worse was the undeniable 2 blue lines on the pregnancy test I held in my trembling hands. I had always imagined sharing the news of my first pregnancy as a moment of joy, an occasion to be cherished. But as I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, eyes red from restrained tears, I realized this milestone had turned into a millstone around my neck. When I told Jack about the pregnancy, his response was as lackluster as ever. "Well, that's something," he mumbled before quickly changing the topic to discuss a home improvement project his mother had suggested. It was Linda, of course, who took the reins of my pregnancy as though it were her divine mission. She began dictating my diet, my activities, and even the hospital where I would deliver. But her intrusion didn't stop at unsolicited advice. She managed to turn my pregnancy into another venue for her psychological warfare. "You're eating again," she would say, her eyes darting towards the modest sandwich I'd made for myself. "Shouldn't you be careful about gaining weight during pregnancy? This is doctor recommended, Linda," I'd reply, mustering all the patience I had left. Doctors these days don't know what they're talking about. Back in my time, we knew how to handle pregnancies, she'd counter. And so it continued. As the weeks went by, my energy waned, but Linda's expectations soared. She turned my home into her personal palace, ordering me to clean, cook, and cater to her needs as if I were a servant rather than a daughter-in-law, and a pregnant one at that. "Chloe, why haven't you vacuumed the living room yet?" She'd yell from her self-assigned throne, my old reading nook where she'd spend hours scrolling through her phone or watching daytime TV. "I've been feeling really tired today, Linda. The doctor advised me to take it easy," I said, my voice tinged with desperation. Tiredness during pregnancy isn't an illness, you know. Jack once again remained conspicuously silent, his compliance deafening. The tension reached a breaking point during another heated dinner discussion, where Linda decided to critique my choice of baby names. "That's a ridiculous name for a child. You might as well pin a kick me sign on his back for his entire school life," Linda sneered. "Enough is enough, Linda. This is my child, and I have a say in how to raise him or her," I snapped, my patience finally depleted. "Oh, so now you're talking back to me." Linda's eyes flared, her voice escalating. Jack intervened, but not in the way I had hoped. "Chloe, you're being emotional. Mom's just giving her opinion," he said. I looked at him, then at Linda, and then at the house that had turned into a nightmare. I felt trapped, humiliated, and utterly alone. I could barely recognize the woman staring back at me in the reflection of my tarnished wedding ring, a woman who was slowly losing everything she had once valued: her home, her dignity, and most devastatingly, her will to fight. And that's when it happened, the ultimate betrayal. Linda, filled with venomous triumph, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If you can't handle a simple family discussion, maybe you shouldn't be a part of this family." Jack said nothing. His silence spoke volumes, cutting deeper than any words ever could. In that moment, I realized that my nightmare wasn't unfolding. It had already unfolded, and I was living in it. My life had become an unrecognizable maze of shattered hopes and suppressed sobs. I moved like a zombie through the rooms that no longer felt like my home. The baby inside me seemed to be the only living part of my existence, and I clung to that tiny spark of life as my last shred of hope. But even that was threatened. One cold evening marked my breaking point. We were having another one of those god-awful family dinners, where tension cut through the air like a knife. I had spent hours on my feet cooking a meal that I knew Linda would find fault with, no matter how perfect it was. Each critique was a jab, each scoff a slap. I knew another one was coming, and I braced myself for it. But when it finally came, it was worse than anything she'd said before. "You really think you're fit to be a mother if you can't even manage a household? What are you going to do with a baby?" Linda sneered. My heart sank into my stomach, each word a stab at my already fragile self-esteem.